Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of What the Article. Our guest today is Counsellor Vedanta Attri. Hi, Vedanta, how are you doing?
Hello, Karthike. I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So let's kick start the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll have a couple of questions for you, and the
Mm-hmm.
first one is, how did you think of becoming a counselor? If you could just share your story with us.
Sure. So it wasn't like a straightforward journey. It
Mm-hmm.
was it was just kind of something that happened along the way. But I do feel like it is important for me to talk a little bit about what led up to that, because
Yes,
I feel
please
like a
do
lot
that.
of
Yeah,
people are always like confused about what they want, especially kids, who have just graduated, and there's a lot of pressure
true,
as to what you need to do. And
true.
so this kind of is a little bit about that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I started off doing my sciences at high school, and then I ended up getting into dentistry university at Manipal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went with like, hey, this is
Mm-hmm.
great, let's do this, right? So I did
Interesting.
that, and
Yeah.
yeah, very interesting, till I did not understand anything.
True.
So
I think
it
most of
is,
us are like that, right? In a way.
yeah,
So yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So for me, it is important to understand what I have to learn, because
Sure,
otherwise I can't retain it.
sure.
Yeah, so anyway, but people who can, that's just like, I really love when people can do that, and when people can actually learn up things.
Yeah.
I admire them. So I did it, but I had to, after a year or so, I think
Hmm.
I wasn't studying hard, I was not interested. And I think that's why, right, there's a
Hmm.
correlation there. Like, if I'm not
True.
interested in something, I'm not going to put my heart into it. I need to
Absolutely.
love what I do.
Yes.
And you know this better than
Yes.
anybody.
Yes. I know that. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so then it was very difficult, because I had to basically tell my parents that, look, I don't want to do this, and it really broke their heart. But they were still supportive, and I feel very blessed about that. And
Hmm.
so I started doing my psychology degree in Singapore,
Hmm.
at James Cook University here.
Yeah.
And it was great, but I still, even though it was something that I had always wanted, psychology was something I
Sure.
loved and I was
Sure.
interested in. It didn't capture my interest as much. I didn't enjoy it, because there were
Hmm.
a lot of like statistical subject matter
Yes.
and research subjects, which was always slightly difficult getting my head around, because I don't like maths. I'm not that kind of person.
True.
But I mean,
True.
I still did it. It was very useful, because now when I think back, I have a very good understanding of things, because I can look at that
Hmm.
research perspective. And I
Hmm.
worked in a thesis myself as well,
Oh, amazing.
for a year. So that
Hmm.
was quite good,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
again, like, it helps. So
Yeah.
once I graduated from my I graduated with this bachelor
Mm.
in psychology, I went, okay, what now? So that was the
Yeah.
big what now question, right? Because that
Yeah.
doesn't qualify me to become a counselor. I cannot
Sure.
be a counselor because
Sure.
of that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I interned as a research assistant, just to see if
Hmm.
I could grow to like it in
True.
a real setting, uh, but I still didn't like it. And so my father said, okay, just do a master's now. And
Yeah.
again, I was so blessed.
Yeah.
And so I kind of use like an elimination method, because I knew
Yeah.
that this time what I wanted to do had to be something I felt strongly about, and I had to
Yes.
be the best at what I
Yes.
did. Like, that's the focus I went in with, which
Mhm.
was very different for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, okay, which country? So I went with Australia instead of the US or the
Hmm.
UK, because I had a little bit of knowledge, because I studied at a Australian university here in
Okay.
Singapore.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, what next? So I looked at
Hmm.
the something called the Group of 8 universities.
Okay.
So this is one of the top 8 of the top universities in
Hmm.
Australia.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, now what? So I was looking at like marine biology, all of these different degrees,
Sure.
till I came across the Masters of Counseling. And I
Hmm.
never knew there was a Masters of Counseling degree. So I
Okay.
think you need to do your research before you make a decision, because there'll be things you don't even know exist.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, because I went, oh my gosh, like, this is it. And that's the
Yeah.
moment when I went, okay, I need to do my counseling. Because in my psychology degree as well, I really enjoyed counseling subjects. I like the contact, the connection. Yeah, so that's how it happened. Sorry, that was really long.
Yeah, that's okay. So you gave us a brief about where you did your degree to become a counselor. So if you can just elaborate on that a little bit, so people listening can, Yeah.
So I did it from the University of Adelaide. It's in South Australia, and the degree was actually a Masters of Counseling and Psychotherapy. So they don't just counseling is how you work with a person, right? And work through a lot of mental health issues, stress, coping strategies, all of that. But you can do it in different techniques, different ways, and you can train to be a specific counselor or a specific therapist. And so the degree covered that. So you can be like a Freudian, a therapist, a psychoanalytical therapist. You can be a Jungian therapist. You can be an experiential therapist. You could be CBT, which is the best known therapy now. You can be an emotion focused therapist. So it really gave me insight into, okay, what kind of counseling. I'm still trying to figure that out. Specifically the field. I am working with a population, but it was an amazing, it was the best thing I ever did in my life.
That's amazing. That sounds really interesting. And so what did you specialize in, is my question now. So so if you could just share some insight on what you're specialized in.
So I think I was very lucky because the minute I graduated, I started applying for jobs in Singapore. And this wonderful company called the Cabin Singapore contacted me just through word of mouth because I applied to a lot of practices. So they specialize in addiction. And so I trained with them to be an addiction counselor. And that's what I'm doing right now.
So what are the challenges that you face as a counselor on a day-to-day basis, if you can just share with us?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like any other job, but it can be very draining because our tools here are, the heart, brain, voices, all day long, right? So if I'm seeing 6 clients in a day, plus I'm doing group, I can't sit on a computer, or I can't I don't have any tools to work with. I have to constantly be on. I have to talk. So that in itself can be very, very exhausting. So a lot of times I come back home and I'm just like, I have no capacity to have any more conversation with anybody. So I let my husband know, stay away from me, give me my space. I need that right now. So in that way, it is very draining. Additionally, I think I think one of the challenges, this is just personally, because I am young in my field. I don't have a lot of experience. So one of the challenges was because I work with a very niche sector. So, of course, this is the addiction field that I work in, but also the clientele that comes, they're very high performing clients. They are very well to do. They've been working for so long. So of course, when they see a young therapist, they can always question how I'm going to help them. It hasn't, touch wood, it's been quite good, but that was always,
that's amazing. So I think that connect they must have had with you, that is why they have never questioned the thing.
I mean, I hopefully, I hope they do. But yeah, of course, that was a challenge initially. But I think once I got confident, it was better. I think lastly, one of the challenges is just dealing with the addiction, dealing with addiction work. The biggest thing about addiction and why it's difficult to work with addiction clients is because of something called the denial system. So this is a function of your brain, because in addiction, my brain goes, this is my priority. I need this substance or this process to survive. So when my brain is thinking, I need this substance to survive, my prefrontal cortex, which is, my rational mind, my rational brain, it goes, let me come up with any excuse to keep the substance in my life because I need it to survive.
I agree with you.
So that is the denial system, which becomes very difficult to penetrate. A lot of people will come in going, okay, I see the effects, but it isn't that big a deal. You know, it's not that big. But like when we go deep underneath, it's like, no, lots is going on, and you're actually about to ruin your life if you don't make these changes. So, that would be.
So, what advice would you give to people during this pandemic lockdown? Right, because there are many people who are at home for a longer period of time. So, if you could just share some insightful words for them.
I'm in it with you all. I think I'm just holding on to my sanity. Well, I think it's very difficult. This is a truly unusual and unique circumstance that we all have to work through. I think something that really is important is to stay connected with yourself, right? Because like, I can't just say, okay, everybody needs to have a routine. You need to have like, get up in the morning, do exercise. That's not applicable because we're all different, and everyone's struggles are different. Right? So like, for somebody, it's fine for them to sit in bed and not, like, it's okay. They can survive in that setting. So like, but for somebody, like, that might not be ideal. Because like, I think coming back to the question that you asked before, one of the struggles I felt recently was, I think, not even recently, I have felt this, is working with, self-harming clients or suicidal clients. That is very difficult because as a counselor, especially in addiction, for every counselor in that sense, but like in addiction, it's different because like, if someone is drinking and they are suicidal, you're not thinking, and so something can happen. So that's very scary for a counselor because it's almost like you have some, like, you're being
added responsibility on you.
Exactly. That is a very draining aspect. So for some people, like people who are prone to depression, people who are prone to feeling suicidal, that could be harmful.
Absolutely.
Their ideal is to isolate, to not connect with people, to stay in bed. But for somebody, that might not be the deal. Like, they just need to rest, and it's okay for them to do that. So I think, like, it's very important to go, okay, like, what's going on for me? If I am staying in bed all day long, doing nothing, like, what is going on? So questioning yourself, being self-aware, and going, okay, what do I do? I think something that I can always talk about is having a toolbox for yourself. So there are some things like mindfulness. There's this wonderful app called Headspace, and there are lots of other apps. I tend to lean on Headspace. It's just guided mindfulness, where it's a little different to meditation. It's more about being in the present. So, acknowledging your thoughts, but also trying to come back to the present, being aware of your surroundings. That always helps me with like focus and grounding me. You've got grounding techniques. You can have journaling is a wonderful tool. In these times of uncertainty, people can start overthinking. We all do it. And when that happens, it's too much. So sometimes you just have to like visually just put your thoughts down. And so that's quite good to do. Journaling is something to do. Of course, routine, sleep, exercise is important. But again,
I feel like exercise at this time is very important because we're all at home. So and it can get a little overwhelming for everyone as well.
It's a great example, right? Because like, when you tend to be like, when you're angry, what happens to your body language? Like, you'll go like, that's it. Like, you're very closed. You can see how your emotional state is coming into your somatic state, your body. So what happens is, if you can, the same thing can happen in the opposite way. So, or if I'm sad, right? I'm like droopy shoulders, like I don't want to talk to anybody, like that can happen in my body language. So therefore, then exercise is quite good, because sometimes it can not only just bring you out of your thoughts, it brings you into the physiology. If I'm tired, I'm going to stop thinking. I come back into the present. But also they find that if you are exercising, you can come out of your mental state. Your body language can then have an effect on your emotional state.
So you've just started your career, but how's the journey been like? So if you can just share some insights with us, because there'll be some young people who would want to be counselors. And if you could just share some insights on how this journey has been, so they can get a fair idea of how it's going to be. Yeah.
I mean, I have a bias because I love my job. And I think because I love my job, you know, of course, that doesn't mean that I don't have like difficult times, right? Like there's always going to be difficult times.
I think all of us who love our jobs find it difficult at times, right? So
yeah, of course. But like it's just easier to carry on.
Sure.
If I love my job, if I have a passion for it, because I can overlook the cons in that moment and go, no, what is the long-term thing here? I can look at that. So it's easier in that sense. But I think thinking about other people, I think it's very important to have your support. So I have daily supervision. So this is somebody who has been in the industry for a while, regular supervision, talking about our client load, you know, how it's affecting us is quite important. You know, I can sometimes go for counseling because sometimes if this is the thing, if I'm unaware of what's going on for me, and that's very easy. It's a very easy trap because we all have defense mechanisms.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
So sometimes the best way, there's this model where, you know, you've got the circle of emotion mind and you've got the circle of rational mind.
Yes.
And then when you combine the two, there's something called a wise mind. If I'm in my emotion mind, if I'm angry, anything you do when you're angry or you're sad is not going to go well for you because you're in your emotions. You're not thinking rationally.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right? So when we are angry and we scream at people, it's because we are in our emotions. We're reacting. We are not responding.
Absolutely.
If I am in my rational mind, however, I can always do, okay, I should do this because this is what I need to do and this is what is correct. But a lot of times what is correct will not connect with you emotionally.
Absolutely. Agreed.
You know, so when that connect is not there, we end up suppressing our emotions. And it will come. That's never the best way. We avoid, we don't want to face it. We don't want to talk about it. Doing that is because we don't want to be vulnerable. Is looked upon. Vulnerability is a weakness for a lot of people. You know, so there are various like core beliefs as to why we would suppress or why we would get quite emotional. The idea is for us to just calm down and see, okay, how can I be wise about this? So I think coming back to your question, because again, I have strayed.
That's
for young counselors, it's very important to do this process of being quite self-aware, being self-reflective. I see that my work suffers when my personal life is suffering. So then I have to go, okay, like what do I need to do to be okay with this? You know, and to make this okay so that I can feel good about what I'm doing. So it's important to have that balance. It's important to know when to ask for help, because if you're not, if your energy will transfer onto your clients, your clients will pick up on that. And if I'm feeling bad, it's not going to. So that, again, coming back to the challenge with a counselor, like a lot of times in an office job or whatever, however I'm feeling is not going to affect my work directly. It will indirectly. But here I am in direct touch. And if I'm not feeling good, a client can pick up on that and the session won't go very well.
And finally, to end, why should somebody become a counselor, and how should they go about choosing what kind of counselor they should become? Or so that's the question.
Sure. Something I remembered before answering this question, to your question about how to deal with this current circumstance. Also social support, like connection. It's very important, right? Because a lot of times what's going to happen is we're not going to have that social connection right now because in the lockdown, we're not meeting people. And a lot of people are in lockdown alone. So like, how do you work around that? So sometimes like, you have to make that effort to stay connected with people, and social media or all of these things are a great way, but you don't want to lean on social media too much to rectify how you're feeling as well. You just have to be aware. Coming back to your last question, why should anybody be a counselor? I mean, I don't know. It depends, you know, it depends on a person. Like every profession is suited for a person. So whatever you're interested in, please go ahead and do that. You know, counseling personally gives me meaning and purpose. I feel like I can do something for someone.
Yeah.
And so I feel good about that. I also sometimes can get a lot of validation from it. So, that's not always the best thing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm great, but I think, counseling is a wonderful, if you want to help people, if you want to connect with people, it is a wonderful field. Working and deciding what type of counseling will come with experience. I think it is on the job. We train on the job. So you want to be able to, during your degree, understand, okay, what are the and this is what was great, because we had placements in the degree. So, we were able to work with people, and I was able to go, actually, I cannot work with a child, because to me, seeing the child suffer is, I can't. I get too emotional. I can't.
Absolutely. Okay. We agree.
So I had to go, I'm not going to work with this population, right? I want to work with adults, with young adults. So it is a very personalized process. I can't say this is the way to do it. It is a journey. I think the most important thing is trying to just listen and not giving advice, and tailoring your work.
Not to judge. I feel not to judge.
100%. 100%. Like, for me, it's so, like, people don't want to talk about their stuff because there's so much shame and guilt attached to what they've done. And so it's important to provide them with that safe space where they feel not judged. Yeah, like you said.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. And it's really been an insightful session for most of our listeners. And we'd really like to thank you. And we look forward to all our listeners to coming back and to another episode of What the Article really soon. Thank you. Take care. See you. Thank you.